Hello game devs. In this tutorial we are going to create object pooling system together. In the previous video we created object pooling system in our own, but in this tutorial we are going to create our object pooling system in the more professional way. Unity object pooling system is more optimized, it's faster, and also is really easier to use. So without wasting time, let's go. First of all, we have to create an empty game object as our object pooling system. Then we have to create a script for that object pooling system. Then create a script. As I said, in this video we are going to use object pooling system in the Unity way. So we are going to use the class that Unity provided for us for object pooling system. It is how we are going to use this object pool. This object pool class is a generic class, so we have to define the type of object that we are going to use. In our case, we are going to use a game object. Then we have to set a name for this, for example pool. Then we have to create an instance of our pool. So our pool is equal to new object pool, and then in the constructor of our object pool we have to set these functions. Here as you see, we have a function, create function, action on get, action on release, action on destroy, and here we have a collection check. This collection check help us to don't release some object multiple times, and if we release something, for example twice, it will throw an exception, and then we know that we are doing something wrong. Then we have a default capacity. This default capacity is the count of objects that we can have in our pool, and we can increase this number to this max size. And you have to notice that in our object pooling system that Unity provides for us, at first we don't have any instantiate. This create function will instantiate some object for us, but at first we don't have any create function call, and every time that we get some objects, if we don't have any objects in our pool, then our pool creates some object for us, and then it will store it in the list that is in our pool, and then we can use this object. So let's create our function. At first we have to create our create function. So create function is something like this: create, then this is a lambda expression. We have to instantiate something when we want to create something, so we have to provide a prefab for this. We have to create a public game object prefab, then I want to provide it here. After that we have to create an action for our action on get. Action on get, when we are getting something, at first we have to active this, and then we can use that. So for example, we are getting some ball, then we have to ball dot set active to true. We have action on release. It is same as our on get, but we are going to set active to false. So action on release, our ball dot set active to false. Then we have on destroy method, action on destroy, for example our ball, then we are going to destroy our ball. In this case that we are calling a function in the lambda expression, we can do it in an easier way. We can just remove this, and then we say our on destroy action is our destroy function. It's really easier. Then we have to set the collection check, our default capacity, and our max size. I want to set our collection check to true because I want to know when I'm doing something wrong, and then default capacity to something like 100, and our max size something like 1000. This is our object pool. Now we have to create some public functions so other class can use our object pooling system. We have to create these functions: public game object get object. This function have to return our pool dot get method. Then we have to create public void release object. Then we can release some objects. So then we have to provide a game object that we are going to release that, our pool dot release, and this is our elements that we're going to release. That now we have everything done. But before moving on to next step, I want to explain this default capacity and max size a bit more. For example, think about this scenario here. When we create this pool, at first we have an array of game objects with this size, and then when we release some more game objects, then we have to have a bigger array. Then our array size would be something like 200, 300, and something that our pool think we are going to use. But the max size of our array will be this 1000, and if we release, for example, 1001 objects, that one object will be destroyed. I think you will get the point. But if you have any problem about this part of object pooling system, please let me know in the comments, and then I will help you to understand this part. So let's move on. Here I created a ball object. It is a red ball. We have to set the active to false, because at first our object shouldn't be active. Now we have our pool, and we have something that gets us some objects. We have something that release some object for us, but we have to know when we are going to use these functions. For example, in our game, when I'm shooting with my gun, I have to get a bullet and then shoot it to somewhere, and then when our bullets hit somewhere, we have to release that. In our case, we are going to create something. For example, here it will create some balls and then fill our pool with these balls, and after, for example, 10 seconds, our balls have to be released. So let's do it. So here we have to create a game object. I want to call it something like a spawner. Then we have to create a script for that. So now let's create our spawner script. At first we have to have a reference to our object pooling system, so we have to create a public object pooling system. Then we will provide this in our inspector. I want to define the public float as our speed of spawning. Just call it speed. For example, when it is 10, we are going to spawn 10 objects in 1 second. So we are going to need a timer. We have to create a private float timer. Then in our update function, we have to create our timer like this, plus equal to time.delta time. If you don't know what is this time.delta time, it is the time that is between the two frames. For example, when we have 100 FPS, it will be 0.01 second. Basically, it is 1 divided by our frame rate. After that, if our timer is greater than 1 divided by our speed, because our speed is the rate of our spawner. For example, if it is 10, we aren't going to create a object every 10 seconds. We are going to create 10 objects in 1 second. If we have this condition, we are going to use our pool system. We are going to use our pooling system, then get objects. But I think it's better if we set the position and rotation of our game object here in this function. So we have to define the vector tree as our position and the Cartesian as our rotation. Then before we return this, we have to create a variable. For example, our ball, it's equal to this. Then our ball dot transform dot position have to be our pose, and our rotation have to be our root, and then we have to return the ball. So in the get object, we have to provide a position and a rotation. For the position, I want to spawn this in the our game object position and our game object rotation. Now we know when we are going to get some objects, but we have to know when we are going to release some objects. For releasing objects, I want to create another script in our object. For example, I want to create something like releaser script that we are going to release our game object. At first, it have to have a reference to our object pooling system. So object pooling system, it is our pool. Then we have to define it in our start method. So it's really easy. Pooling is equal to game object dot find. Then we have to copy this name here and paste it here. Then dot get component, the object pooling system. Then we are done with our reference. We have to create a timer. So I want this timer and this speed, but here our speed have to do something different. It is our lifetime. Now we have a timer and a lifetime. Timer plus equal to time.delta time, same as we did it before. Then if our timer is greater than our lifetime, we have to release our game object. Dot release object our game object. And before that, we have to set our timer to 0. So now it's time to test our game. Here, this is our object pooling system. We have to provide our object here. Then we have a spawner. We have to provide this here. And speed, I want to create, for example, 10 objects in 1 second. And let's move it here. And let's test the game. As you see, we have a problem here. Why? Because here our lifetime is 0. I want to change it to something like 10. Now our lifetime is okay. So I think now everything should be fine. But nope, we have another problem. Let's take a look at our releaser script. This is our problem. I write time.time, but I have to write time.delta time. This is the correct form. Now we have our object pooling system. We aren't create any object anymore because we have some disabled game objects that are in our pool and we can use them again and again. So we don't have to create them again. So now if I move my spawner somewhere like this, and now we aren't create a new object. For example, let's take a look at this object. And if we wait, we see that we don't have it anymore. For example, see this one? Now it's gone. So everything is working fine. Now we have a super optimized object pooling system. As you see, everything is working really fine with a really great performance. As you see, we don't have any lag here. And everything is working fine. Before finishing this video, I want to tell you that we have some other object pool system. For example, we have a linked pool. This is the linked pool. It is same as our object pool because as you see, it is implementing I disposable, I pool, and I object pool, the same as this one. As you see, I disposable, I pool, and I object pool. They are same, but they are different in the way that they are storing the object for us. This one is using a list for storing, and this one is using a linked list to store objects. If you don't know about linked lists, I provide a link in the description. You can read more about linked lists and then you will learn what is the linked list. In some scenarios, linked pool is really more faster than object pool. You can use this one to store your objects. And if you know how linked list is working or how vector or simple list is working, you can decide what type of pool you are going to use. You want to use a linked pool or you want to use an object. I think it's enough for this tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and if I helped you in this video, please like my video as a thanks. I hope see you again and goodbye.